Teachers of Reddit, what is the most depressing thing your kids have said? One of my best students in one class showed up late. After I had a slew of students rolling in late and I had said there would be consequences for the next ones. I walked over to talk to him and he almost started crying, so we stepped outside and I angled him away from the class and asked what was up. Turns out he had been kicked out of the house, living in his car, his phone had died and that was his alarm, and he felt terrible about being late. I told him I was so proud of him for making it into class, and I was going to make angry faces and make it look like I was mad, so the class didn't think I was going back on my word, but that he was amazing and could take a few minutes to collect himself and join us when he was ready. I think I even waved my arms in the air a bit to hem it up. That dude aced my class, he was amazing. I had a student not come to school for 2 weeks. When he finally showed, he was limping, and his foot was wrapped up in a large dirty ace bandage. I called him to the office after school that day to check in on him. He told me that he had been in the river fishing for his dinner 2 weeks ago and slipped on a rock. He cut his foot so badly that he couldn't walk until today to make it to school. I asked about going to the doctor, but he hadn't seen his parents in so long that he didn't know how to get to them for help getting to the hospital. I called CPS, got him help as much as they could offer. We found out he was living in a tent because the house had been foreclosed on when his parents disappeared. A bunch of teachers chipped in and got him groceries, clothes, and started driving him places after that. Today, over 2 years later, he's working a job and one of our teachers still clothes and feeds him. The student is too prideful to live with anyone and kind of couch hops now, but he's so strong and resilient. He's an incredible human and I think he will change the world one day. This was a few years ago. This student came into class one day really late and escorted my some official. He threw his back on the ground and sat in his seat frowning. Turns out, the day before, he went home and his foster parents had decided they no longer want him, so he went into the care of social services. Everything about this child went downhill from there. I was also in an interview with a mother and her son, and she straight up tells us that she's not too concerned about her son, as he's not her favorite child. The defeated look on her son's face still tears me up. School counselor here. My second year I had a courageous student who suffered from a rare debilitating disease. She didn't have many friends because she was never in school and always in hospitals. She loved reading though. She brought books with her to the hospital. Unfortunately, due to the disease, her eyesight was now deteriorating and she knew she would eventually go blind. She cried in my office that she would miss her books and didn't want to be alone in the dark. I couldn't help crying with her. She transitioned to audiobooks on her iPod. This was roughly 14 years ago, a time when middle schoolers didn't have smartphones. A year later, she passed away. My hope is she's at peace, reading all the books she wants, with other friends she's met. Got a message today about why a student could not come to class yesterday. Sorry, I couldn't come to class. There were gunshots right outside my apartment, and I thought I was going to die. The police did come eventually, and I had to give a statement. I will get the work from yesterday done today, thanks. Yeah, you get the extension. It's so very sad that the kid thinks that is the biggest thing that you will worry about. The work that he didn't do yesterday. Poor kid. I've noticed when students encounter trauma, they either dive headfirst into schoolwork as a form of escapism or become completely disengaged, even from their peers. Mental health of students is something I consider with each lesson, especially right now. It's only anecdotal, but this fits. My father abruptly passed a couple years back. I was in graduate school and my little sister was in her 3rd semester of undergraduate, so we weren't adolescent students by any means. But I dived completely into my coursework as an escape and my sister became completely disengaged, eventually dropping out. I cannot imagine how an adolescent student deals with the death of a parent, along with other forms of trauma. I am hungry. How much time until the break? Kid who didn't have food at home. I will quit school and become a criminal, because robbing is the only thing I'm good at. Teenager who had a really bad situation at home. Edit for some context. I was a teacher at public school in a poor region in São Paulo, Brazil, and many children had problems at home. Many of them didn't have a father, lived in small houses, in the slums, etc. The first child didn't have food at home. All teachers knew about it. His mother had a lot of problems and all his siblings were in the same situation. So every day the most important thing for him was to eat, obviously. The teenager apparently had food, but there was a history of violence in his family, and he had already committed crimes, and he probably felt empowered by it, because he apparently felt bad and stupid in other activities. I wasn't the regular teacher. I was part of a NGO that offered specific attention to students that were behind the the others. So every day I would go to their regular class and pick 6-10 of them to have special classes. So at the beginning they felt really bad and other students were calling them stupid. At the end of the program, many students wanted to join us and our students felt much more confident in general. So it was great, but obviously we didn't solve the hunger problem and this teenager wasn't convinced that he had a future out of crime. Taught at an inner city charter school, had a bright 6th grade girl who started sleeping during my classes, which was not like her. When I asked after school what was up, she told me that her family, her 2 younger sisters and crackhead mom, moved into the homeless shelter and the last time she slept through the night, all their stuff got stolen. Ah shit, we had a kid like that. He slept every day and the principal told me that the family got robbed at a homeless shelter, so they were squatting in a vacant house. It was his job to stay up all night and keep lookout. He was 12. We let him sleep in the nurse's office. This was in Detroit, circa 2008, so right after the big crash. There was just nothing. Not that there is ever much. A female university student in China told me her mother tried to sell her for $8 as a baby. A few weeks ago, one of my online kids had a band-aid on her left temple, so I asked what happened. She said, "My mom was angry with me and threw a pencil and it stuck in my head with blood." I don't want to give out too many details, but I've had to fill out 4 CPS reports in my 4 years of teaching. 3 for students that either confided in me or were had signs that they were being physically abused, and 1 that was sexually abused from the child's father. It's honestly the worst part of the job, having to hear and see just the awfulness some kids have to go through. Last year I was student teaching and I had to call. The whole week after, I was so sad for my student. It was awful. At the end of my term, the student said, "I wish you were my mommy." It broke my heart. Fuck, that's some heavy stuff. As somebody who was physically beaten as a kid, people don't understand the lasting effect it has on you. It changes you for life in ways people wouldn't expect. I hope that kid has a bright future. It was my first year teaching and the holidays were approaching. A 2nd grade student asked me why Santa visits everyone else's home but skips hers. On Christmas Eve, my father and I played Santa. We dropped off gifts at their home for each child with of course the permission of the legal guardians. Parents were in jail. When I was in 2nd grade, my principal called me into his office one day just to ask me how many siblings I had. I was confused, and when I told my mom, she just assumed it was a question for the free lunch program. But that Christmas Eve, my principal dressed up as Santa and dropped off 2 trash bags of toys. My mom cried because she and my dad had no money that year. I promise you, those presents meant a lot to those kids because they meant so much for me. Keep doing what you do. This made me tear up, honestly. I had the same bus driver as my 3 older siblings when I got to elementary school, and my mind had reached the same conclusion. Santa always forgot. She got me one of those soft sweatpants and matching hoodie sets in my favorite color. I saw her in high school. Somehow she recognized me, and I remember giving her a hug and sobbing at 18. A student's mother shows up for the first time in almost a year, and she's well dressed and looking like someone straight out of a fashion magazine. Had the latest phone, flashy jewelry, overall expensively dressed. The student, on the other hand, was always shabbily dressed and once went without a blazer for a week because his parents weren't buying him one. We allowed him to wear his sports jersey in the class, which is normally not allowed, and constantly called the parents to no avail. She showed the slightest possible interest in her child, telling us to make him study however we wanted, and even hinted hitting him if he didn't behave. A lot of talking and counseling. Later turned out that the student was actually from a well-to-do family, but the parents didn't get along well. Father went out on business trips for weeks together, where he was having multiple affairs and the mother was doing the same at home. It was an open secret. The child acted weird just to get some attention in school, which he wasn't getting at home. I really felt for the child. He was 11 at the time. Thank you all for watching. Write in the comments what depressing things you heard kids say in school, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.